City Council members David Alvarez and Kevin Faulconer faced off in the first of 6 scheduled debates. The mayoral candidates had 26 minutes to answer questions from a panel of journalists, including myself. Political science professor Carl Luna joins me with his take on the debate. And welcome back, Carl.
Good to be here.
Now, what kind of tone did you pick up from this debate, and do you think it sets the agenda for the rest of the debates?
Well, I hope it doesn't set the agenda because the tone was very negative, Peggy. There wasn't a vision process going on. You had both candidates bashing each other. It was probably tone deaf for what the public wants to hear, but it could be both campaigns are deciding to play it safe, go on the negative, and not risk anything.
Well, we asked each candidate if and why they thought major supporters for their opponent was a detriment, and that was one of the questions that they actually answered specifically. So let's listen.
80% of the funding of support of my opponent, 80% is coming from one source, unions. And when you look at their spending $3 million, the same unions that nearly drove the city to the edge of bankruptcy. The mayor is the chief negotiator of labor contracts. We need a mayor that's going to be independent. I have that experience of standing up and supporting taxpayers. My opponent, unfortunately, has the experience of standing up to the labor unions.
These are the same people that have driven our city to the ground. His supporters are the same ones that caused the pension underfunding, actually. They all voted for that. They all supported that. And that's where he comes from. Independents, just look at our records. Kevin will sit and listen and do whatever these special interests tell him to do. The developers, the big corporations, those that have enough money to have lobbyists and have high-paid consultants, not everyday citizens. That's who I'm running to represent as mayor. He's running to represent his lobbyist friends from his lobbyist days.
Now, this was the first of many times they said the same argument. You're supported by the unions, you're supported by big business. Does this sort of finger pointing actually have much of an impact on voters at the polls?
It does if you paint the narrative that one guy's a tool of labor, the other guy's a tool of the capitalist corporatist class, which is basically what they were saying to each other. It reinforces your base to turn them out. It would be nice if somebody pointed out, what's a labor union? It's a bunch of doctors, nurses, teachers, and all the rest, policemen. What is a corporation and business? They're the guys who provide jobs and invest in their community. Demonizing each other isn't the way you move forward. But if you don't have a vision to offer, then you throw mud at the other guy.
Both candidates took ownership of promoting an open government. Both said that no public money should be used for a Charger stadium. But they differed when we asked, how would you pay for repairing potholes and street and sidewalks? Are they just splitting hairs here? Is there really a whole lot of difference on how they would pay for the infrastructure repairs that right now are up to $1 to $3 billion estimated?
Well, at the end of the day, you either have to have assessment taxes, you have to have a bond issue. We're talking about a $120 million bond issue, and that's a drop in the bucket for what you have to do. With the big ideological issue here, there's not just one way to fill a pothole. You can fill it with city workers who are paid a certain amount as union workers. You can fill it with subcontractors outsourcing. That's a source of debate. But at the end of the day, the pothole has to get filled. They all agree on that.
Well, we were talking about, the structure of the actual debate. And when you have a TV structure and there's very, very strict time guidelines, so there's no time for follow-ups, which was quite frustrating, obviously, for journalists and probably for some listeners. What would you like to see the next 5 debates look like as far as either in the structure or content?
I'd like to see a nun with a ruler stand behind them to rap their knuckles when they don't answer the question. The candidates, bald-faced, were asked questions. How do you feel about the chief of police? And they ducked the question. That doesn't really give the voters what they need to know. You keep hammering your one soundbite. That's great. But I don't think it was an informed debate. On the basis of that, this debate, I'd like to write in Todd Gloria for mayor.
But in the future, do you think there's a way to do it as far as I'm talking about from media, from radio?
Allow the people on the panel to ask follow-up questions. Put that in the time. Limit the number of questions. Get it down to 1 or 2 or 3 issues. We're going to have a debate about infrastructure today. Next week, it'll be about unions. And then really allow follow-up. Otherwise, candidates will wiggle away and just try to go back to their talking points.
Good point. Mesa College political science professor Carl Luna, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I want to let folks know that for more on the mayor's runoff, they can go to kpbs.org/election.